So believe it or not, I actually have some good news for you guys. I know, shocker. But Minnesota just became the 4th state to provide free school meals to all kids. Now, by the way, stop and think about that number. There's only 4 states that provide free school meals to all kids. Only 4? That's astonishingly low. I would have definitely guessed it was more than that, but no, it's not. So let's go through some of this article here. Surrounded by students, teachers, and advocates, Democratic Minnesota Governor Tim Walz on Friday afternoon signed into law a bill to provide breakfast and lunch at no cost to all of the state's roughly 820,000 K-12 pupils, regardless of their household income. The move to make Minnesota the 4th U.S. state to guarantee universal free school meals, joining California, Maine, and Colorado, elicited praise from progressives. Quote, beautiful, tweeted Stephanie Kelton, a professor of economics and public policy at Stony Brook University. She's the MMT lady, the modern monetary theory. UC Berkeley professor and former U.S. Labor Secretary Robert Reich wrote on social media, let this serve as a reminder that poverty is a policy choice. In the richest country in the world, it is absolutely inexcusable that millions of our children go to school hungry because they are living in poverty. Okay, so we're going to get to, in just a second, man, the Republicans were mauling over this. They were actually openly arguing against feeding hungry kids. I want you to sit on that for a second. Let that marinate in your brain just a touch. They're openly arguing for kids being hungry. An estimated 1 in 6 children in Minnesota don't get enough to eat on a regular basis. That's a high number. But 1 in 4 food insecure kids live in households that don't qualify for the federal free and reduced meal program, leading to mounting school lunch debts in the tens of thousands of dollars, Minnesota Public Radio reported. See, that's amazing. So in other words, if you're in the lowest income bracket, you can already get free school lunch, but there are plenty of kids who are like lower middle income, but their parents really struggle to pay the bills, and they're racking up massive amounts of lunch debt. And this is going to make it so everybody can get access to free lunch. So it fixes that problem of the 1 in 4 food insecure kids who make a little too, whose parents make a little too much to put them in that lowest bracket for income. Tens of thousands of children are set to benefit from Minnesota's new law, which could be operational as early as summer school in July. Some of them were there to thank Walz at the signing of the ceremony, where the sense of elation was palpable. So this is from More Perfect Union here. When he's signing the bill, look at how happy the kids are.
It is now law.
I saw a Republican, like a right-wing Twitter account, comparing like them using kids for this bill signing to like the Nazis using kids in their propaganda. I don't know, man. Using kids for a genocidal regime versus using kids to feed them. I think feeding them is it's okay to actually have a photo op after you say, I'm going to make sure no kids go hungry. God, people are so ridiculous. Now, people are making a comparison between this and the Sarah Huckabee Sanders bill signing. So she recently signed a bill to reduce the regulations around child labor. So we're going to have more child labor now. And they had a signing ceremony now. People are using this picture of like upset-looking kids around Sarah Huckabee Sanders. To be fair, I learned that bill signing was actually a different bill. It wasn't the child labor bill. So it's a little bit misleading when people put one photo next to the other, but at the same time, certainly if you're signing a law that loosens child labor standards and gives us more child labor, I would imagine kids next to you would probably be upset anyway. Like they wouldn't really like that one too much. So anyway, but this is good governance. We're seeing actual good governance. And there's a lot of jokes floating around Twitter now of like what Democrats do with a supermajority in blue states versus what they do with a one vote, majority in the Midwest. And they're always like Clinton Democrats and neoliberals in the bluest places. But in the Midwest, you got these Democrats who actually do based things from time to time. and they act way more progressive, even with slimmer majorities. So here, now let's get to the, I want to get to the response from some of the Republicans. In a now viral clip from the state Senate's debate over the bill earlier this week, Senator Steve Drizkowski questioned whether hunger is really a problem in Minnesota, even as the state's food banks reported a record surge in visits last year, months before federal lawmakers slashed pandemic-era supplemental nutrition assistance program, that's food stamps. Quote, "I have yet to meet a person in Minnesota that is hungry," Drizkowski said before voting against the bill. "I have yet to meet a person in Minnesota that says they don't have access to enough food to eat." Bro, if you don't know anybody who's hungry in Minnesota, that's on you. Because, yeah, you probably run with a different group on the cocktail circuit at the country club. Doesn't mean that nobody's actually hungry. There's plenty of evidence that people are food insecure. You just don't want to see it, and you just never see it. God, these people are unbelievable. During Friday's signing ceremony, Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan, Democrat, said, quote, "To our decision makers who believe they have never met someone who's experiencing or has experienced hunger, hi, my name is Peggy Flanagan, and I was 1 in 6 of those Minnesota children who experienced hunger. By providing free breakfast and lunch to all of our students, we are removing barriers and removing stigma from the lunchroom," said Flanagan. "We are helping family pocketbooks, especially for those 1 in 4 who don't qualify for financial assistance with school meals. We are leading with our values that no child should go hungry for any reason, period. This is an investment in the well-being of our children, as well as an investment in their academic success," Flanagan said, calling the generation-changing bill the most important thing she's ever worked on in her life. Okay. Minnesota Reformer reported, quote, "The majority of Minnesota schools receive federal funding from the National School Lunch Program, which reimburses schools for each meal served, though it doesn't cover the cost of the entire meal. Under the new law, schools are prohibited from charging students for the remaining cost, and the state will foot the rest of the bill, about $200 million annually." So stop and think about that. All it took was a measly $200 million every year to make sure all the kids are hungry, or excuse me, are full, are no longer hungry, I should say. That's all it took. Now stop and think about the fact that the Federal Reserve just looked at the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank and came out and said, we're going to do a $300 billion backstop like that, no questions asked. Nobody said, oh, are we going to pay for it? Can we afford to pay for it? How are we going to pay for it? And by the way, the Fed could just effectively print money anyway. But like, nobody cares about the price tag for something like that. $200 million annually. And you are going to have conservatives talk about, well, how are you going to pay for it? We can't afford to feed hungry kids. NPR noted that the legislation is similar to a program that was introduced during the pandemic to provide meals for all students, but was discounted at the end of last year. Last month, the Star Tribune editorial board, they're conservatives, opined that providing free breakfast and lunch to all Minnesota students, including affluent ones, is, quote, excessive. Pushing back against this argument for means testing, Darcy Stuber, director of the Nutrition Services for Mankato Area Public Schools and Public Policy Chair of the Minnesota School Nutrition Association, asserted that meals should be guaranteed to all kids at no cost, just like other basic learning necessities. Ready? I love this point. Here's what she said to fire back against the conservatives who said, this is excessive to make sure like all kids can eat, even if they can afford it. Quote, "We don't charge for Chromebooks and desks and things like that. It's a part of their day, and they're there for so many hours. It just completes that whole learning experience for the child." Minnesota Representative Sidney Jordan, the bill's lead author, made the same point to counter GOP lawmakers' complaints following the initial passage of the bill. Quote, "We give every kid in our school a desk. There are lots of kids out there that can afford to buy a desk, but they get a desk because they go to school." Wow. Devastating point. Totally accurate. Yeah, it's considered, this is just part of going to school. This is just how it works. You go to school, you're going to have a desk, right? Like, it's part of going to school. We could do the whole, like, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, bro. You got to pay for the desk, bro. But that's stupid. It's baked into the cake of going to a school. And they're saying, just take it a step further. Same thing with meals now. Same thing with meals now. If you tell me to make a list of things I want my tax dollars to go towards, of course, at the top of that list, I'm going to have stuff like healthcare, police, fire department, roads, getting rid of child hunger? I mean, it's pretty based. That's pretty based and basic, I should say. So massive shout out here to the governor of Minnesota, who actually did something good. And again, guys, there's only 4 states in the country that do this. Only 4 states. So every single state should move in this direction. And for the ones that do, they deserve massive, massive amounts of praise. If you want to see me and Crystal Ball interview legends like Noam Chomsky, Cornel West, and more, subscribe to Crystal, Kyle, and Friends on Substack. $5 a month gets you the video version a day early. Remember, we take 0 ad dollars for this podcast. Or you can sign up on Substack for free and get the audio version a day later. Link in the video description box below.